Hey, and welcome. This lesson is all about JavaScript math, and we can have a lot of fun with math. And of course, math is super useful when you're coding JavaScript, especially when generating random numbers, rounding up, rounding down, and rounding numbers in general. So used quite a bit, especially when you're creating games or any type of interaction. Random is a great way to go to create some type of unexpected result for the user. So we've got math floor, math ceiling. The difference is that the math floor returns the largest integer less than or equal to a given number. So they've got some examples at the Mozilla Developer Network. So if we've got 5.95, 5.05, math floor 5, or math floor negative 5.05. So what do you think the answer for the first three is? And if you said 5, you are right, because they're all rounding down to the nearest value, as opposed to ceiling, which does the opposite, and it returns the smallest integer greater than or equal to given number. So what it's doing is that it's rounding it up. So ceiling dot 95 is 1 because it's rounding it up to 1. Ceiling 4 is going to be 4 because that's the rounded value up. Ceiling 7.004 or 00004. So anything above 7 is going to round to 8. And opposite, if we're doing negatives, you see that it rounds to the negative number. So it's not rounding it up as per se, it's rounding it back down to the nearest number, so going down. So that's the difference between the negatives there. And when you run it, you can see that we get the results 1, 4, 8, and negative 7. And then my favorite, math random, use it all the time, is gives you ability to generate a random value, floating point, pseudo random number between 0 and 1. So what that means is when you do math random, you get a random value 0 dot and a bunch of digits after that. So that's what this is doing, 0 to 1. And also keep in mind as well, inclusive of 0 but not 1. So that's why when we are trying to get math random, we use math floor in order to fine tune what's being returned back. So random integer, so the maximum value that we want to receive, and we're using math floor to round it down, as well as math floor for the maximum value, and then we're multiplying that by math random. So what happens here is, in this case, when we use this function, we get a value, so we're passing in 3, and the math floor is going to be 3 as well, and we're multiplying it by math random, and then we're multiplying it by floor again. So that way we're getting a value of 0, 1, or 2, and that's why 3 is never included, because we're not 1 when we're rounding it. Also, if you want to round it up, so if you want to get 1, 2, or 3, in this case you could use math ceiling, but most commonly people use math floor and round it down. And if you want it to have a number of 1, 2, or 3, you would just add 1 to it. So you see that as well within a lot of expressions. And then we just have the basic math random output, so number between 0 and 1. So notice all of the decimal places. So they're all 0, decimal, and a bunch of digits after that for math random. And of course, there is a challenge at the end of this lesson, and that is to create a function that can generate a random number. So getting to inputs where we've got a minimum and a maximum value, and then returning back a random value depending on what is input into the function. So maximum is exclusive and minimum is inclusive. So keep that in mind. Generate this function, and I'll walk you through it. So you can pause the video here and I'll walk you through the solution. So open up the editor, and we're going to just create our function. And you can call this getRandom. It's going to be expecting 2 parameters, so minimum and a maximum value to be passed in. For the minimum values, so we're going to take whatever is passed in using math ceiling. We're going to take that minimum number and we're going to use math ceiling in order to generate the minimum number. And then maximum number, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to apply math floor to that maximum number. And then returning back math floor, math random, and then multiplying it by maximum, subtracting the minimum, and then adding the minimum amount back into the formula. So when we refresh, we can pass in values now into that function. where we've got a minimum return value, a maximum of 4, and you can see that now it's generating a random number all the time different, and the minimum that it's going to be is 1, and the maximum that we're going to return back is going to be 3. So it's never going to hit at 4. And you can use this formula in a number of ways. So if you want to get a random value from 1 to 5, you can see that now it's returning back 4. If you update that and bring it down to 2, so you're always going to get a random value anywhere from 1 to 2, not including the 2, because remember that was part of, it's exclusive of the maximum value. So it's always returning back 1 in this case. So go ahead and try this out.